Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. Welcome to the HIT Foundation. For those who have been here let me get out of the projector light. For those who have joined us for the first time today, welcome to our auditorium. And it's nice to see so many returning faces for our dialogues. I'm Hilary, and I'll be the MC for today's talk. So just a brief introduction on who we are. The HIT Foundation is a charitable organization established in 2013. Our main work focuses on impacting lives in Asia through quality education and effective healthcare. So our dialogue series is part of the thought leadership arm of our work. If you've been with us for a while, you know we've had a diverse range of speakers across many different topics over the year to share their perspectives on pertinent issues, especially in healthcare and education. Today, we are privileged to have Mr. Jonathan Sim share his ancient wisdom on using the Confucius concept of Li to understand modern gaps in communication. His talk will expound on how different generations grow up with different social rituals or social norms in communicating, how growing up in the age of the internet reshapes how youth perceive and handle in-person communication interactions, and how, more importantly, educators can use this concept of Li to bridge gaps in communication across generations and reach their students. So if you're an educator from across Southeast Asia tuning in to the webinar today, I hope that there'll be some actionable tips and useful ideas here for you. So a quick admin announcement. The talk will run for about 30 to 45 minutes with a Q&A at the end. If you're joining us on Zoom, please type your questions in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end of the talk. For our live audience, we will be passing around microphones, so you may raise your hands later and ask your questions live. Do note that the entire session is being recorded. So a quick introduction on Mr. Jonathan Sim. Jonathan's an associate fellow of the NUS Teaching Academy and a lecturer with the Department of Philosophy at the National University of Singapore. There, he teaches philosophy of computing and data analytics, as well as Chinese philosophy, to both undergraduates and working professionals. Jonathan has appeared on Channel News Asia, the China Global TV Network, and the South China Morning Post, amongst other media outlets, to share his passion on using Chinese philosophy to bridge the gap in modern communication. And a few fun facts about Jonathan. He is a man of many talents. He is the scriptwriter for a short film called Flying Tigers that will be out soon, so you can catch the posters somewhere. He has 2 albums on Spotify and Apple Music, which he will plug his stage name later on. And he enjoys doing stand-up comedy and hopes to be a professional comedian in the future. So I'm looking forward to a great number of jokes during your presentation. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Jonathan to begin his talk on bridging generations with ancient wisdom.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jonathan. As Hilary said, I do Chinese philosophy and the philosophy of computing and data analysis. Wow, 2 very different things. I tell you a secret. Even though I do Chinese philosophy, I failed Chinese. But that's okay. Over time, with passion, I improve my Chinese. Now I order the mixed rice. It's not 这个那个. I can say the thing, right? Yeah. Anyway, one of my personal pet projects is how do we bring together the philosophy of computing and the Chinese philosophy together into one. So one of my big projects now is how do we develop culture, communities online. Oh, interesting, right? So today I want to share with you this topic, bridging generations with ancient wisdom. It's a very, very personal story for me because it is, as a Chinese philosopher, it has helped me to shape how I think about education. Okay, and also I'm going to share with you some of my personal journey teaching and how that I was able to connect, applied philosophy in that sense, my learning in Chinese philosophy with what I've experienced on the ground. Can I just see a show of hands of the people in the room? How many of you here are educators? Educators. Okay, good. So we got a couple of educators here. So I do want to share with you some of the insights that I've learned on how we can bridge and teach better, especially to the younger generation. All right. Now, for everyone here in this room and online, please feel free to share your experience of misunderstandings between your students or the younger generation and that you had with yourself. Yeah. I'm sure those of you in education might have experienced quite a few. So please scan this and you can post it later. I'll run through some of them. I think I'm very confident that what I will share today, what you experience will apply, right? So let me, without further ado, start with a story. Yeah. Okay. Now I've been teaching in NUS for 7 years. All right. And over these 7 years, one of the things that has shocked me, surprised me really, is how students write emails, right? Even till today, right? I get emails from students that really makes you wonder, like, hey, what have I done wrong as a teacher, right? So let me show you, and just to show that it's not just a meeting, right? Here is an email by one of my teaching assistants, okay? So a student misses class, and so she sends an email to the student and says, hey, I hope this email finds you well. I noticed you are absent from today's tutorial. May I know the reason for this, please? Okay, so far so good, right? And this is what the student replies. This email finds me, but I'm not feeling very well. Jokes aside, I honestly just missed the class because I couldn't wake up. I had a tight schedule recently and I was rushing to meet many deadlines. So I slept about 5 a.m. Regardless, I understand that you must mark me absent, so please do so. I will go and look through materials, blah, blah, blah. On the bright side, I'm glad that I had a good rest. Well, how many of you, if you're a teacher, your blood will start boiling? Right? Now, so imagine, 7 years as a teacher, I do regularly get emails like this, yeah? Many teachers also, not just myself, right? And I talked to this teaching assistant, I say, hey, like, how do you feel? And she herself, me too, right? We end up asking this question, what have I done wrong as a teacher, Like, did we do something to offend them or what? But I tell you what's interesting. Many times when I meet this student in real life, they're not unhappy with you at all. They're like, oh yeah, very nice, very polite. And then I've been struggling for years to figure out why is there this disconnect? Why are students sending emails that really make people's blood boil, many teachers' blood boil, but then when you meet them in real life, they're very nice people. What's going on? Then one day I sat down with one of my students, also a teaching assistant, undergraduate, and he said this, we've gotten so used to social media, to expressing our thoughts without filter, right? That now it affects how we communicate with other people. And I was like, oh, wow. So now that I have this perspective, right, when students send me this kind of emails, I'm like, yeah, okay, probably they're writing the way they do on Instagram or TikTok, right? But it's quite interesting to see how whatever we do online, some of this behavior carries over into the physical space, into our day-to-day activities, right? And it's causing a lot of friction. Now, then I started to reflect. Has this happened to me and other generations, maybe people younger than me or maybe even people older than me? Then I reflected, and I thought, there is one incident that is very deep in my memory. And what is that? When I was a teenager, many years ago, my friends and I, we would get upset with the uncles and aunties in our neighborhood. Why? Because whenever we'll go out, right, we'll encounter these uncles and aunties, and they like to talk to us, and they say, hey, aboya, going out, aboya, coming home, going to eat. Then they're like, but then, yeah, right? Why are you asking the obvious, right? So a lot of my friends and I, we were asking, like, why these uncles and aunties so kepo, so nosy? Why they keep asking us the obvious, right? Then one day I had the biggest revelation of my life, right? It was in a class, and the professor was saying, this is how the older generation greet people. I was like, oh, right. So like whole bunch of us, we thought wrongly of the other. Now, think of all the times that we encountered rude people. We get upset, right? But isn't it interesting that perhaps, maybe people they don't mean to be rude. Maybe what we're encountering is a different kind of problem, yeah? So this has been on my mind, and it has really shaped how I started engaging with my students differently. How we can bridge this gap so that we can avoid these kinds of miscommunication, misunderstandings. Yeah. So then I think one of the things that I want to do is this question. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted by that. Yeah, okay, thank you. So, as a Chinese philosopher, right, looking at all these things, well, what would Confucius say if he's alive today, right? Yeah. So, what would Confucius say? I believe Confucius is going to say, we are experiencing a breakdown in the transmission of Li. For those of you who know Chinese, Li is the Li Mao de Li, right? But of course, many of us are here asking, what is Li? And for that matter, what does Confucius have to offer that the modern world doesn't already offer, right? Some people like to say, modern scholarship already covers so many things. Why you need to go back 2,500 years? So let me share with you some interesting insights that Confucianism does cover, right? Consider this. How are you? You know, when I went to Australia, right, a lot of people came up to me and asked, how are you? Then I thought, hey, these Australians, very caring. So how are you? Then I tell them, oh yeah, my day, da 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 da. Now after a while, I start to see, these people, they look a bit impatient. They're like, am I doing something wrong? I am, because when they say, how are you? The appropriate response is, good, how are you? You're not supposed to tell them about your day. Isn't that interesting, right? So there is, depending on which country you're in, okay, how are you is taken either literally as a question, like I know Singapore and Germany also. If you ask them how are you, they're also going to tell you about their day. But in countries like America, the UK, Australia, how are you is a greeting. Now, so this is very insidious, right? Because it shows you that the same words can mean very, very different things depending on the culture, depending on the communicative culture. Yeah? And so, one of the things that stops short in our modern scholarship, like semiotics studies these kind of things, right? We always talk about signifier and signified, right? So we say, okay, how are you? The signifier is this words lah. And what's the signified? It's a greeting, an expression of care. What's the Singaporean equivalent? Jiapa bre. Have you eaten, right? Well, it's more like a Chinese way, right? It's also a greeting, an expression of care. But for people outside of this culture, they're like, why are you interested whether I eat or not, right? They'll be thinking this, right? So isn't it interesting? The same words, but mean different things to different people, right? So even a handshake. So to expand our minds, right, it's not just words. Even handshakes also can have a symbolic meaning, right? By shaking hands, what does it signify? Agreement, equality, cooperation. Right? So, let me just do this as a demonstration, okay? I am going to go up to you, and what I want you to do is do not respond to me. Resist the urge, okay? Resist the urge, all right? Resist the urge. High five. Hello, how are you? How are you doing? How are you? Hello, how are you? How's your day? Have you eaten? Don't respond. How are you? How do you feel when you didn't respond? Do you feel strange? You feel strange, right? Hillary was blushing a bit. How do you feel? What's your experience of it?
A bit put upon.
A bit weird. You know what? So this is interesting, right? We feel weird. Some of us feel ashamed, right? And can you imagine, if let's say you wish me hello and then I look at you, you'll feel upset, right? So there's something more going on beyond mere semiotics, beyond mere signifier and signified. There is this moral dimension, so to speak. Yeah? Either we feel upset with ourselves for not doing the right thing, or we feel upset at others for not doing the right thing, for not responding in a way that we expect. Isn't that interesting? So, there's this group of scholars in Boston, philosophers actually. They like to call themselves the Boston Confucians, yeah? The Boston School of Confucianism, yeah? They say, hey, you know what? There's something actually very valuable about Confucianism for the modern world. Much of our moral critique required by our society consists in the analysis of the signs shaping our social habits, more than deliberation about purposes and policies. Although those are also to be considered, Confucianism calls attention to the strengths and weaknesses of the sign systems that define our civilization itself, our society's practices of propriety. So what does it mean? Basically, there is a moral dimension to all this symbolic communication. How are you? Handshake, high five, right? There is a moral dimension. If we don't respond, we feel a sense of shame. Like, we feel weird, right? And if somebody doesn't respond, we also say, why is this person so rude? Right? there is a moral dimension in all these communicative aspects, right? So basically, words, actions, symbolic. Timing and place can also be symbolic, right? Yeah, some places can be very symbolic. Yeah, let's say you propose to your wife at this place. Then to come back to this place 1 year later, 2 years later, has special symbolic meaning, right? So even the role can be symbolic. President, very symbolic role, correct? Yeah, and many more, right? So all these symbols, there is another layer to it, a moral dimension. So Confucianism can give us a richer way to look at symbolic gesture, how we relate to people and things, and relationships itself. Now, let's talk about Confucius, all right? In Chinese, Confucius is what? 孔子. Now, of course, I know some of you are wondering, how do you go from 孔子to Confucius? Because you see, a more respectful title is to call him 孔夫子, right? Then the missionaries from the West went to China and they said, hey, this guy seems to be talking interesting stuff. Let's translate it into Latin and bring it back. So 孔夫子in Latin is Confucius. That's how you get Confucius. Right? Now, his family name is Chiu. First name is Chiu. Surname, family name is Kong, right? And then there's this thing where in ancient China, when you reach a certain age, you can give yourself a name, right? So our good friend Kongzi, Confucius, gave himself the name Zhongni. Do you know he actually has an English name? Yeah? Do you know? It's called Johnny Kong. Because it's Zhongni, Johnny, Johnny Kong, Johnny Kong. So our good friend Johnny Kong has a lot to say about Li, right? So this is the simplified Chinese and the traditional Chinese, right? Now, for starters, Li is such a difficult word to translate into English. Why? Because there is no nice mapping, you know. Like if I call it rituals, then that's how you like, so old-fashioned, so culty, right? Conventions, norms, ceremonies, etiquette. Yes and no, right? It covers all these things. Yeah. So I like to think of it as social rituals, social etiquette. Yeah. A good way to talk about it is that it is a culture's best communicative practice for expressing a certain intention. I know, a bit abstract. Don't worry, I got pictures to show you. Yeah. And another scholar, Professor Li Chen-yang, he says it is a cultural grammar. So people who do well socially have equipped themselves with all the right cultural grammar to interact with others. So the more Li you know, the more you're like that social butterfly. You know how to interact with so many people, right? Now, Li, so here's some examples to give you a better sensing of what Li does, right? Li adds weight. It legitimizes things. Consider this example. If I say, let's say you did well, and I say, hey, good job, well done, right? The effect is very different as compared to you did well, then I give you a certificate. Wow, good job, well done, right? A certificate is a ritual object, symbolic communication. Or even, I have an award ceremony. Wow, well done. The feeling is different, right? Somehow by framing it in this more formal setting, the experience is different. How we perceive it is different. It changes us also. Li also marks the start and end of events, or even hallmarks in life. Just this event, right? You notice we had a social ritual just now? There was a Li that took place just now at the start. Before clapping, Hillary had to introduce me, right? I had to be introduced. Why? Isn't it weird if I just suddenly, without introduction, I just come up, hello everyone, then you're like, who are you? Who is this guy, right? So it has evolved as a best communicative practice to have someone from the organization come and do the introduction. Then you all won't be like, oh, it's so weird, right? So it marks the start and end of things. It marks certain key moments in our lives, weddings, or even graduation and stuff like that, right? Even start of school, end of school. A lot of schools have ceremonies, Li, yeah? It also regulates our interactions with people. You notice this is what we're doing now, right? So you and I are actually in a Li right now. We're performing a Li right now. There's a certain ritual script where the speaker speaks and the attendees listen and don't interrupt, right? Okay lah, I like to joke, and then the ritual script also says that you all must look interested. No, but there is a script, right? Technically, you all can just stop me here and there and say, hey, I got this question, But we are observing a social ritual, a Li. We're following the script. Even relationship, right? You don't just anyhow touch people, right? Relationship, they can hold hand, they can hug. You know in Chinese, molest is what? Fei li, which in classical Chinese means against ritual. Isn't that interesting, yeah? So it regulates our interactions with other people. How does it regulate? Interestingly, by shaping our identities. You know, I am me, right? We are all individuals, right? But by being in society, we hold many different roles. We wear many hats, right? I'm a child to my parents, I'm a parent to my children, I'm a spouse to my partner, sibling to my siblings, teacher to my student, employee to my boss, friend to my friends, right? Every role that I play has different expectations, has different requirements of how I interact with them. Imagine if I interact with you the same way I interact with my girlfriend. Firstly, weird, right? Then also my girlfriend will say, hey, then you treat them the same way, how am I special, right? So rituals, our roles define how we interact with other people. It sets expectations and norms of what to do, yeah? And that also shapes our identities. Isn't that interesting? Now, Herbert Finger is another philosopher. He says, there's a certain magical quality about Li, right? Consider this, high five. You notice what just happened? I say high five, her hand automatically just raised up. Did I point a gun and say, you must raise up your hand? No, she didn't, right? There is something so magical. I do, you all automatically respond. Even in a setting like this, I come out and speak, you all already just listen. When she says, okay, let's now have Jonathan come to speak, automatically you all clap. Isn't that interesting? There's this magical quality. No coercion needed, and you all already know how to conduct yourselves. Yeah? So, NLX 13.6, Confucius says, hey, this is the better way to govern people. Why? Because if you order people with laws and punishment, then what's going to happen? People are just going to find a way to evade the law. There's a saying popular in the army. Do but don't get caught, right? So we have all the rules, but do but don't get caught. So there's no moral transformation. But with this, there is moral transformation, right? If I try to shake your hand and then you don't respond, what happened? You feel bad, you feel shame. That is the moral driving force to make you act in a certain way, right? So if we raise people with Li, then people will have the internal motivation to behave in certain ways. Wow, isn't that amazing? Now, Li also does this wonderful thing, intensifying bonds and builds trust. So what are examples? Well, Christmas is coming soon, right? Yeah. So don't we do things like this? We sit around table to eat a meal. Yeah, that's a kind of Li as well, right? We celebrate at festive occasions. And also end of the year or certain times, we also light fireworks, right? And then we watch it together. Even though one fireworks is like what, $100,000, right? It's more than my annual salary. One boom like that, 100K, right? But look at it, we are all gathered and it somehow bonds us. How on earth does that work? Well, this is what the philosophers have to say. In reality, right, we have certain patterns of behavior. Right? Left to my own device, I'm like, I don't feel like doing this, I don't feel like doing that, right? We behave in a certain way. But then, when we engage in a ritual, in a Li, what happens? Wow, there is this additional layer going on, right? Yes, we are participating in this dinner, in this makan session, but at the same time, there's a certain thin imagination. This is the ideal situation, yeah? Now, think of all like Chinese New Year, right? Everybody gathers for reunion dinner. It doesn't always mean that everyone actually loves one another 100%, right? Like maybe if there's family feuds and stuff like that. But at Chinese New Year, everybody comes together and behave like, we're one big happy family, right? That's the imaginative layer that pulls us together. But notice what happens. Because of this imaginative layer, it actually breaks us out of our patterns. Yeah? Like, I am this person, but because of the imaginative layer, because of the social expectations, I break out and I follow the ritual script. Like a lot of people always talk to me and say, hey, Jonathan, wow, you're very energetic. Then I say, but do you know I'm an introvert? Then they say, you're an introvert, but I can't tell. Then I say, yeah, because I am in a role. I'm playing out the ritual script of a certain role as a lecturer, as a speaker, right? So, now here's the beauty. You notice we are able to gather together like this, right? because of this, we are also showing that Li reveals that what it is what can be. Yeah? That even though we may not be one big happy family, the very fact is that at that point in time in Chinese New Year or any other festive gathering, we are behaving as if we're one. We are breaking out of our natural patterns of behavior to be that other person, to be in this ideal situation. So we can be more than what we currently are. So every time we successfully do the ritual, the Li, we are changing and showing to ourselves that we can do that. Yeah. Now, so here's the thing, right? For Confucius, he talks about Ren, which is benevolence, humanity. That's one way to translate it. And he says, you know what? Li is what? The best practices to express our humanity, our benevolence. Now think about it. Okay, like why do we need Li? Because sometimes we have good intentions, but if we express it in a way where others don't understand, then what's going to happen? Then they misunderstand our intentions, right? I have this story. This happened to me like 1 year ago. I had a student. Good intentions. He come up to me. He says, Jonathan, I care for you. He's a guy. I care for you. You can tell me all your problems. I'm here. Tell me. Do you not feel creeped out by it, right? Good intentions, but expressed in a way that is so easily misunderstood. So Li helps us to shape our expression so that it's well understood. This care is expressed in an appropriate manner. Now, maybe I don't have the right moral feelings. Then what can I do? By practicing the Li sincerely, what's going to happen? It's going to transform me as well. Yeah? If we can try this. It's a small group here. Turn to the person next to you, okay, and really mean it when you shake hands and say hello. Try that. Come, let's do that. Just turn to the person next to you and really mean it. If you want the contrast, you do one where you just anyhow say hello, like hello, and then you do one where you really mean it. Hello. Try. There is a difference, right? There is a difference, right? So even though I may not have the right moral disposition, practicing Li can actually shape that. Isn't that interesting, right? Very magical. So let me recap. I've done all this stuff about Li, right? Why is it so important? Because Li, again, is the culture's best communicative practice for expressing a certain intention. Now, why is this a problem? Because now we are living in the globalization, and even we have all this internet culture, subculture even, right? What are we seeing? You know, when you encounter someone from a different communicative culture, what happens? They always appear to us as rude, right? Like, you know, there are some countries that don't have a queuing culture, you know? Like Singapore, we like to queue, right? But there are some countries that have no queuing culture. Then they come to Singapore for holiday, and then what happens? They practice what is normal to their culture, right? Then to us, what does it appear? Oh, cut my queue, so rude, right? We respond like that. But actually, to them it's normal in their culture, right? Now, take this idea, expand it even more. How about people who use the internet? How about people from other countries? Even though we are using the same hand gestures, the same actions, the same words, it can mean different things. Isn't that scary, right? So many times I started to realize, every time someone does something that appears rude to me, I pause already. I'm like, maybe I'm dealing with a different communicative culture. Maybe the person doesn't actually intend to be rude. Yeah? So Confucius says, we're experiencing a breakdown in the transmission of Li. Why is this the case? Especially when within the same island of Singapore or within our same countries, right? Why is there misunderstandings between the generations? Well, I have 3 reasons for it. One is, there's this movement that started since the what they call the Romanticism. Yeah, these people think, we want authentic expression. Nowadays, a lot of young people also believe this, right? Authentic expression. I don't want to say these scripted words. Not sincere enough. I want to be as sincere as possible, so I come up with my own way of expressing. Now, what has this resulted in? It has resulted in the younger generation paying less attention to conventions, traditional conventions, right? Because they want to express sincerely. But now, like I showed you the example of the student, right? So too sincere already until, it's very weird. Also, one thing I learned from students is many of them are saying, hey, the adults are sharing less about their experience, either because they're busy, dual income family, working to support the family, or in some cases, some parents are saying, because the world has changed so much, right? Suddenly now we got phones and everything. They feel my life experience is not relevant anymore. So they're not telling their life stories to their children. This is what I learned from my students. Sometimes they come to me and say, hey, Jonathan, can you teach me this? Then I say, ask your parents. They don't want to teach. They don't want to share. It's happening. But the biggest one is this, emergence of online Li. Because now every young person is growing up spending so many hours in front of the internet, right? And what we don't notice is that something new is happening. Something is happening. Yeah? And this is also coming from my own reflection. I also experienced, like Windows 95 came out when I was in primary school. Yeah, the internet and Windows 95 came out when I was in primary school, right? So I reflected on my own growth and I talked to my students and say, yeah, we also experienced the same, right? So when we spend a lot of time online, there's also going to be online culture. And online culture means there's going to be online Li, online communicative practices, right? And what this means is that for a lot of young people, okay, they don't realize that the online Li that we learn may differ from offline, face-to-face Li. Why? Because if I'm doing online, like everyone of my same age group, right? I do online, I learn the Li online, right? Then I practice with my classmates. They also learn the same online Li. So we don't feel that there's a difference. But where's the difference? The clash happens when? When they interact with the adults. That's where the misunderstanding happens. But then the young people start to dismiss it as, the old people don't understand us. And then the adults say, these kids these days, I really don't understand them. But actually, there's a clash of communicative cultures. Okay? Now, what's a good way to explain this? This has happened right under my nose for a few years. Do you know that emojis have changed meaning? How many of you are aware of this? Do you know that how many of you use smiley face when you talk to younger people? Any of you use that? Yeah, some of you use that. Do you know that smiley face has evolved and changed among the young people? I'm surprised, So, what do you think smiley face means? I got some of my students and some young people in this room. Don't tell the adults. What do you think smiley face, in our time, smiley face means happy, right? What do you think it means to the younger kids now? What do you think it means? Now, to a lot of my students say, smiley face is what? I'm putting on a brave front. Please don't be mad at me. Do you know this? I was surprised. I was like, oh, is that so? Now I'm very careful when I use smiley face in my emails to them. Yeah. Here's another one. This one. Some of you, have you encountered your kids using the skull emoji? Have you encountered that? Because, you know why? This used to be the emoji for laughing. Ha 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 ha. Then the bit of tears come out, right? Then over the years, the younger generation say, this one not intense enough, does not express how happy I am. So now, crying emoji actually means laughter. Yeah. So at first I was like, why are my students crying in their emails to me? The message doesn't sound sad, right? And then lately there's a new trend. This is not intense enough, now must use a skull. You know why? Laugh until die.
This one only happens in Halloween time, right?
No. And throughout the whole year. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah? Now this means laugh until die. 笑死我, right? Right? The Janine, Alvin, yeah? Right? It's happening. The emojis are evolving. And if emojis are evolving, that means what? Even the words and phrases that we use, the actions that we use, also are evolving, right? And this has changed right under my nose until this CNN article came out. Then I asked my student, I said, is this true? And then she said, yes. She said, yes. And she said something, this laughter is too bland, yeah? Then I was like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what the CNN article said. I didn't show her this article, I just asked, and then she said that, yeah, it's too bland. Now we don't find this intense enough, right? So, this is the result. Now, one of the problems now you see emojis, we think it's universal. It's not universal, right? So words, gestures, all these things also may not be universal. Now you can see how there's misunderstanding, right? So over the years, I've seen it grow from, the adults don't understand us. Now there's antagonism. Now there's distrust. And it's best encapsulated by this phrase that the young kids like to use nowadays. okay, boomer. Have you heard of this phrase? This is the phrase that encapsulates the antagonism that the young and old have now. How do we heal this? This is very, very disturbing, right? Very worrying, right? So, but before I get to the solution, let me say a bit more about how online Li has affected our young people. And this is something that I'm a bit worried about our students, right? It has created a certain sense of disempowerment. Because what's happening? If we're spending so much time online, we're not spending enough time learning offline Li. We're not spending enough time learning face-to-face Li, right? So a lot of students that I interact with, they feel very disempowered. They don't know how to interact with a lot of people nowadays. In fact, Google Books, Google has a collection of books all the way until, like what? Okay, this is 1990, but it goes all the way until the 1800s, all right? So you can do a statistical analysis. 1995 is here, right? 1995 is the birth of not when the internet really went public, right? With Windows 95 and all. The word social awkwardness has increased over the years. Young people are using the word social awkwardness, way, way more. Yeah? Now you talk to young people, you say, hey, go and make friends with this person. Awkward lah, shy lah, right? What? Because of why? They have lost the cultural grammar. If you need grammar to communicate with a language, you need cultural grammar to communicate socially with other people, right? And then, this makes me sad, because every time I go on Reddit, young people like to use Reddit nowadays, so many of them are posting online, I cannot make friends, I cannot find friends. How do I make friends? I'm so alone, I'm so lonely. This is the reality that we're facing now, because there's a severe loss of Li in the face-to-face setting. And one of the things that I'm starting to see is also that some people are applying what they've learned from online Li into offline situations. So what am I talking about? Like, one of the sources of disempowerment is what? They don't know how to handle difficult situations, conflictual, high tension situations, right? Why? Because online, what do you do when you disagree with someone or if things get very heated? You just log off lah. You just close the tab lah, right? You're like, okay, I close. I don't think about it anymore. So they have never learned how to deal with difficult situations. And I've encountered students. I'm very sad because because they can't finish the assignment on time or they come to me and say, oh, I'm going to do this big project. Then I say, okay, very good. Let's work on it. And then they cannot finish the project, right? Then what do? They disappear because they don't know how to handle the situation. They don't know how to handle the negative emotions. And so, you see the picture like turning into a ghost, right? One of the new words that has come up in this era is what? Ghosting. So nowadays, even students are group projects, or sometimes it comes up in the news. They cannot perform, then they don't know how to handle the situation. They disappear from their group mates. They disappear from the people that they're supposed to interact with. This is the level of disempowerment that many of our youths are facing now. Yeah? And this is very worrying because if this is happening, it's only going to get worse and worse. So as an educator, I'm like, how can I empower? Because education is all about empowerment, right? So what can we do? So first, let's look at what Confucius has to say, okay? Now, Confucius' solution might make you raise eyebrows, okay? So let me show you. The biggest solution that he advocates is what? He says, his disciple says, okay, Confucius, if you're going to be the governor, right? What's the first thing that you're going to do? Then Confucius says, I'm going to rectify names. Then they're all like, huh? Rectify names? Even the disciple is like, what is that? How strange of you, right? Then he says, if names are not right, then people have no place to set their hands and feet. What? Sounds extreme, right? I show you. This picture went viral a few years ago. So this boy and girl, they went out together. The guy thinks that they're a couple, but the girl clearly knows that they're not a couple. And then they take photo together. Wow, then you see what's going on? The guy do heart shape because he thought the girl will do heart shape also. But then the girl rejected her because they're not a couple, so she do thumbs up. They call this the friend zone. Like you like someone, but the person put you as a friend, not as a potential romantic partner, right? Now, notice this is a good example, right? Because why? Notice if we call it a relationship, a romantic relationship, then what happens? They can hold hand, right? But not a romantic relationship means what? The ambiguity, what's happening? Don't know whether to hold, don't know whether not to hold, right? That's why Confucius means that people don't know where to place their hand and feet lah. Right? So what are we? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend, or are we just friends? So there's a lot of social situations. Why do the young people feel very disempowered? Ambiguity. They do not know their role. They do not understand their scope. They do not understand what does it encompass. What is my expectation? What do I need to do? They don't know where to place hand and feet. Yeah. So one of the things that Confucius highlights is that names are normative. They prescribe action. Yeah. And people take cues from us, from our social roles. It's just like ballroom dancing, you know. Any of you do ballroom dancing? Yeah. So you know ballroom dancing, the male is the one leading, right? Yeah. And the female what? If the female tries to lead, what happens? Cannot dance, right? Actually, anyone want to volunteer? Come, Hillary. Yeah. You have not done dancing before, right? Okay, don't force you. But basically, if both try to lead, what happens? Cannot dance, right? So one must allow the other to lead. Then we can have the dance, right? So it's like a dance, right? We take our cues from one another. Earlier on, when Hillary said, okay, let's have Jonathan come up to speak, everybody clap, because we took the cue from the host. Notice I said host, right? That's a social role, yeah? I'm the speaker, social role, right? So there are all these social roles that define our action, and we take cues from one another, yeah? So when we name the thing, we are also identifying, this is an exemplary role model. In English is what? We say good student, bad student. Good student implicitly means what? Follow, right? This is a good parent, means what? Follow what this parent does, right? So we're always, do you notice we're always on the lookout for role models, no matter what age of life we are in? Yeah? If you're a teacher, we also want to see who is a good educational role model, right? We do this all the time. Young people also do this all the time. And sometimes they look to us to set the direction. Who should we emulate? Because in the absence of it, where they will just try to identify role models themselves. And sometimes we're not very good at picking out role models, yeah? So, now here's another one, which is Analects 9:14. Confucius says, you know, he wants to dwell with the barbarians. And then someone said, hey, what are you going to do? These barbarians so crude. Then Confucius said, hey, no worry, man. When an exemplary moral person dwells among them, what crudeness could there be? Means what? That the Li of a culture is not fixed, you know. When we encounter a new best practice, what's going to happen? We're all going to say, hey, this is a very good best practice. I got a fun story to tell you. You know, I went to this country that has no queuing culture, okay? Then I don't know what to do lah. It's a fast food restaurant, right? There's no queue. Then, so what did I do? I queue lor. I queue. Being the Singaporean that I am, I queue. Then subsequently, the people came. They saw a queue, you know. You know what they did? They joined the queue. Then someone tried to cut the queue, doing what they normally do in that culture. Everybody scold that person. Oi, go and queue. Isn't that interesting? So when a better practice comes in, people will adapt and follow. So it's not fixed. Li is not fixed. So this gives us hope. Now, so taking all these things that I said, how do we apply this in a classroom setting so that we can bridge this gap, so that we can empower our youths? I think for starters, we need to have conversations with our students, with our youths. What is the Li communicative practices that they've learned online? Understand the areas. Where do they feel disempowered? Most of it has to do with tension situations, conflicting situations. They don't know how to address these things. So listen to them. Identify who are they turning to online as their role models. Yeah? If it's social media, sometimes it's the influencers. Yeah? Sometimes if it's gaming, sometimes it's the loud voices that sound very cool, very edgy or whatever, right? So understand, explore and understand the practices also. You know, one of the things I find that even as a teacher, even though I'm not that age, sometimes I do some of the Li practices, they're very happy, you know. They say, hey, this guy understands us. But of course, you've seen situations where an older person does it and then people cringe, right? Why does cringe happen? Because the social ritual, the ritual script is not followed properly. That's why they cringe. It's like, you know, I trying to, what's a good example? It's like I try to shake your hand, but I do it in an awkward way. Then you also cringe, right? Like, why this guy don't know how to shake hand, right? It's the same thing. That's what they're experiencing, right? So you can build trust. Like learn some of the lingo. Like nowadays, the kids like to say what? Slay, right? So I say slay, the uni students are all very happy. Like, hey, this guy understands our language, yeah? So, okay, next one is what? We can also be role models and demonstrate better Li practices. If they don't know how to deal with conflicting, all these negative emotions or whatever, then we teach them, here are some practices that you can do to handle these kinds of difficult situations. I myself, I was very fortunate, I used to work for this guy who used to be an ambassador. Wow, so he learned all this Li that really empowered me. I used to be very shy, very, very shy. Then I learned from him how he interacts with all these strangers and stuff like that. And then I feel more confident about myself. I'm like, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do that. So we can do the same as well. We can role model for this. Of course, one of the things is, so we can formalize sessions with students and talk about these matters, like sometimes I have I teach a big course of 400 students, right? So I have a weekly session. I say, okay, you can come and chit-chat with me for anything. So some of them come, they ask for life advice. Then we do this. Sometimes you can put resources online. Because one of the things is that, as humans, if it doesn't bother us now, if I tell you, you also won't listen, right? So sometimes we can put some resources online or point them to these resources. So when the time comes, they will consume it. They will pay attention to it, right? Another one is, because sometimes we try to role model, right? Then what would students say? The young people say, they say, oh yeah, you adult, you don't understand lah. You are not the right role model for me, right? So then we can encourage them to so we can help them to identify the best Li practices amongst their peers. I do this thing with my teaching assistants. They're all undergraduate students, so I teach them to teach classes, right? So I get them to role play scenarios together. And then as they role play with themselves, I get them to critique each other. Like, what did this person do well? What can be improved? And then they're learning from each other. They start to say, oh, this is a good practice. Oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, and then they say, hey, this guy is the same age as me. Ah, it's a peer. So they say, this is a good practice. And they add to their cultural grammar. Yeah? So we need to clearly name, this is a good example. This thing that you did, maybe try not to do it so much because it can blah, blah, blah. Then they understand, this is why we don't do this. Yeah? We can also create our own Li. Do you know that? You can create Li as well. Yeah? How? So I'm going to show you. You can create Li to empower students and avoid misunderstandings. One thing I've learned, especially when dealing with the younger generation now, is sometimes giving feedback in an informal setting can backfire. Because why? You do it in an informal setting, they say, hey, why this teacher out to get me? So I've since learned over the years, formalize it. Okay, it's a formal session, okay, everyone, I need to do feedback session with all of you. It's a formal setting. In this formal setting, it has a certain special place and time. This is for feedback. Then they understand. Right? So then they are more receptive to the feedback. Or another example is what I call decompression sessions. Some of my students here are aware of this. Why is this the case? Because if students feel disempowered, what's happening? They don't feel that it's the right thing to speak up or to talk to their peers beside them. Right? So here we are creating the Li. We're saying, okay, now is your time. I empower you. You as a student, now you can, here's your 10 minutes, talk to each other. Just explore the ideas with one another. So we set aside, this is a sacred space, sacred time for you to do and engage in this. Then they understand. And that's how we move them. Another example is we can create new roles. And I do this for my large module, 400 students. Why? Because it's the first time they meet one another, right? And some of these students, they're very, very shy. Not some. A lot of them are very shy. So you put them in the same table, they will not make friends until you tell them to make friends. This is what I'm seeing, right? So how do we empower them? So in every group, I give one person a role. Yeah, in every group, I give one person a role. I say, okay, today you are master compiler. Then they're like, what is master compiler? Then I say, okay, don't worry, master compiler, you must talk to everyone, you must do this. Because they carry a special duty, a special role, what happens? If I do this, not because I want to, don't get upset with me, it's because teacher asked me to do, right? So they break out of their pattern to engage in this new role. That helps them. It works very well. 400 students, it works, yeah? Then the other thing we can do is also integrate Li into our policy. That's an interesting thought, right? How do we do that? Here's one example. Class participation grading. Normally, in universities, the class participation is graded as what? How much you open your mouth. Yeah? The more you open your mouth, the more marks you get, right? How can we change it? I tell them, okay, you are graded not based on how much you open your mouth. You are graded based on how much you help one another. You don't know, it's okay. The more you seek help from other people, the more marks I give. So then they know, okay, the incentive structure supports this way of interaction. Then they are empowered. Another one is, you know what I say? Li reveals that what is what can be, right? Remember this, I said that, right? We have that subjunctive imagining of what the ideal can be like, right? We can also do this in class. So at the start of class, I tell my students, like, I want you all to work as friends, not as strangers. And I do this every lesson. Remind them, hey, you're here to learn as friends. So what are we doing? We're not just setting the narrative, we're setting the imagination. You are here, your identity, your relation with people is not to be with, work with strangers. Together we're friends. So then in their minds they say, we can be friends. We can be friends. You know what's interesting? With these two things combined, I once had a group that they got together. Then one student said, hey, I saw the grading rubrics, I saw the policy, if we all pretend to be friends, we will get full marks. Yeah, so the whole pretended to be friends. They wayang lah, right? You know what happened? After the third lesson, they're all very good friends. Yeah, what is what can be. Yeah, so we can do that too. We set the narrative, we set how they think about their relation with others, and then we let them enact it. Even if they wayang at the start, even if they pretend at the start, it will transform them. This is why I'm very happy with it. I'm okay if they're pretending, because they become friends at the end. Yeah. Third one. Even, group project, among students, they struggle with group projects. Like, I don't understand why this person behaves like that, why this person like that. So what do? We set aside sacred time, sacred space for this sacred activity where they have to talk to each other. Talk to each other, talk about your work values and expectations. How are you going to iron all these things out if it happens? Because they don't know how to handle this. So by mandating it, I am also teaching them certain protocols. This is how you can handle, preempt this kind of situation so that you don't have to face more unpleasant things in the future. So we can mandate these things and implement it into our processes. And then they will also change their behavior. They'll learn through these practices, they also learn from us. Yeah? Okay. Here's another thing I do. Extra credit. Now, again, this is gaming the incentive structure to motivate them. I say things like, take a group photo and insert it into the assignment. Now, it might seem harmless, right? But to make them, when they see, hey, I have to take a group photo, what happens? Then they say, hey, guys, we need to take a group photo. Then they create the opportunity to meet up. I even, recently I did this. I said, one person must hold bubble tea. But you know what's the Li of all this bubble tea and drinks and food? It's not one person, right? It's usually when you're going to have, other people are supposed to have, right? So we're tapping on existing Li. So what happens? So many of them buy drinks for each other when they do the video presentations, right? So that's how we motivate, push them to engage in Li with one another. So at the end of this, at the end of the semester, this 400 strong class, a lot of them become very good friends. Yeah. From I don't know how to make friends to I know how to make friends. So we empower them with Li. Yeah. Okay. So that is all about Li, and I hope that has opened your mind on how we can bridge the gap between us and with them. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I did indeed have a few good laughs during your presentation, so I think you'll make a great comedian.
Okay, thank you.
I am resituating myself 1 second. Okay, we have now entered the Q&A portion of the talk. For our online audience, may I please invite you to...
The Padlet.
Yep, submit your questions via the Q&A function in the Zoom room. And hopefully we can get a quick flash of the Padlet before we begin. Oh dear.
I told a student that, okay, here's one. I told a student that tertiary education is a place for students to learn responsibility. The student reported on me and said I told her she would never be able to get jobs. Wow, this is gross misunderstanding, right? again, this is what I mean, you know, like the expectations, that because of how we communicate the Li, what we expect of each other may differ. How we perceive the words may also be different. This one, I wanted to teach him the value of discipline, and he nodded passionately, but I knew he just wanted to play. What in that sense is what they learn the socially right thing to do is what, just to nod, right? Because if you disagree, it'll be worse, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think along that line, one of the topics that came up was Li being sort of a unifying factor, where if we all participate in the same sort of social ritual, it can bring people together.
Yeah.
My question is, and it will link to a question in the Q&A chat, is this assumes that the people participating might have the same values. What if they have different values? How can it be unifying? And to connect this back to a question on the Q&A, I often hear the older generation say that youth are individualistic and selfish. Is this also due to different values or Li between generations?
Okay, so the first one is Li. We are very adaptive creatures, you know. When we see someone do something very reverentially, or something that looks like a social norm, you know what? We will actually adapt, right? Say, for example, I do this thing, okay, where I go to, let's say I go to you and say, okay, I want you to pass this on to the next person. Yep. With respect and reverence.
Right, okay.
Yeah. You notice what just happened? The Li just got propagated, right? Yeah. We didn't have a previous Li on that, right? Yeah? You see, so reverentially, right? So Li, even though we can come from different cultures, okay. Okay, thank you. So even though we can come from different cultures, we see these kinds of symbolic communication, and we know to adapt and adjust accordingly. So that is the power of Li. Yeah. When we talk about values and stuff like that, I just remembered. So one of the things I like about Li is that it brings together several things that in Western scholarship we treat as separate. Things like identity, things like trust, things like reciprocity, right? But now you start to see part of the ritual action of Li is what? Reciprocity. And when people behave according to the social scripts as expected, it helps us to build trust. Why? Because the person proves themselves to be reliable. We know that the person is not going to suddenly behave in a way that we didn't expect, right? So that's very powerful. Now, what was the question again? The differences in values, right? There is something in Li about that as well. Like, you know, one of the fun, interesting things I noticed when I went to China is that best friends wear the same things. Like, they go to the same shop, they buy the same thing, and they wear the same thing together. Like it was a bit culturally, I mean, for me as an outsider, it was like, whoa, you know, because we come from a culture where, why would best friends wear the same thing, right? In fact, there was a marketing survey, you know, where they found that if they try to advertise the Western way in China, like everyone wear their own thing, the sales drop. So they actually recognize that, oh, we have to do this, right? Okay, where am I going with this? Because we see how Li practices can propagate, right? And part of Li is also instilling certain values. How we do certain things also shapes our thinking, our perspective, our attitudes towards things, right? And if, for example, in China, where people best friends wear the same clothing, it's accepted as a norm, and they see, like, oh, this is a way to unify. For them, it's a best practice. If they try to bring it here, some people are like, oh, so weird. But have you not noticed, in recent times, couples are starting to wear the same thing? Wear the same shoes. Like if you go to Orchard Road or whatever, they wear the same shoes. They don't just wear the same color scheme. They wear the same brand T-shirt and shorts. Yeah. So there is that cultural influence. Now, why? Because these people, they saw another culture and said, oh, you know what? This is a great communicative practice. This is a great way for me to say, this person and I, we are together. Then we have this struggle, which is if we have two competing cultures of communicative practices and people think this is best, and people from the other culture think that this is best, then what do? I think this is where we need to have dialogue to understand why we behave differently first. Okay? Because for some things that don't matter too much, then we can say, okay, sure, we can adapt. When we're with this group, we can use this Li. When we're with that group, we can use another Li, right? But when sometimes we like individualism and collectivism, then I think we need to really ask ourselves, what are we compromising with each aspect of the Li? And especially, we don't exist as individuals, right? We exist in the context of the environment. So in the broader scheme of things, if I think that this is the best communicative practice, but it's alienating myself from my community, is that really best? So then we need to get people to think, what is the best way forward with that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think it encourages dialogue and, you know, just getting people to talk to each other about how their values are different.
Yeah,
maybe.
it starts with that.
Okay, maybe are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
I would like to comment.
We'll pass a microphone. Yeah, thank you.
I would like to comment my opinion on why you get that rude email from the student you consider rude. I think the main reason is that email or WhatsApp is considered a very poor medium, not rich.
Yeah.
Some medium are rich. For example, I talk to you now, it's very rich because I can use my hand signal, I can look at my face, you can look at my face. Yeah? So email is not rich, it's very poor medium. Therefore, we should not ask certain things using email or using social media. It just do not have the richness for you to ask difficult questions. So the student assistants should avoid asking the difficult question, or should ask in the different way when asking that difficult question, why you are absent yesterday.
I think that there are certain constraints. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that every time the student's absent there, every time the TA sends an email like that, they get nasty replies, right? This is like for every 10 emails, one is rude, right? I agree with you. Email is a very thin form of communication, right? Don't have all this verbal, non-verbal communication. But I think what's interesting, if you look at the trends, is that, what's that? If you look at the trends, right? I saw this. There was this medical paper that they found that more people would rather communicate with a medical chatbot than with an actual human being. The younger generation, increasing, right? And it's also reflective of many other things, that the younger generation has bought into this condition, yeah, myself included. I rather have the textual communication, and so that is becoming normalized. So then the problem is, we can't say, all of you people, I am the older person, I want you all to conform to me. Then all the young people will say, hey, who do you think you are, right? So part of the challenge is, how do we then adapt? They're going to spend most of their time online. We can't pull everyone to come to the offline world, right? So knowing how they communicate online is part of knowing how to handle this problem, lah. Yeah. But I agree, lah. I prefer face-to-face for this kind of things. Yeah.
There's a theory called media richness theory.
Yes.
You say that we must learn how to use what type appropriate richness of the medium to talk to the people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just use the wrong medium that is not rich enough to convey the meaning.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I think it has become normal for the young people, and so the issue is going forward, how do we address that? Yeah.
Okay, so I suppose just a quick follow-up question on that topic. You know, since more people are engaging with each other, even on difficult topics through online platforms and things like that, is there a way in which we can meaningfully engage with difficult topics, situations, conflicts online? If you have, general Li guidance on this. Yeah, because, you know, we're seeing more and more, like, there's like online debates, and then, you know, people on Reddit just go off the rails and things like that. Is it possible to have meaningful discussions on difficult topics on the online written platform?
You can have meaningful discussions online, and this relates to some of the research that I'm doing. I share with you an interesting story. You know, on the way here, I took a Grab ride, and then the Grab driver was saying, you know, American Idol broke our culture. he was commenting that. He was saying, American Idol broke our culture. Why? Because it encouraged people to start making, to judge the contestants. And then after that, social media came along and it somehow set the norm that it's okay or even expected to judge everything that we see online. So it's not just, oh, this is nice, okay, moving on, but oh, then we take a side. Like you see now, so many issues, everyone takes a side. And what's interesting is that even I talk to my students, they feel they have to. Why? It comes back to role models. The people they turn to online are setting the example that you have to take a side. You have to judge on things that you may not even be remotely connected to and take a side. So they feel they have to do it. So I think one way out of this, what I call madness, is for us to show, you don't have to do this. Offer a counter-narrative. Now, how do we go about doing this? One of the interesting insights I gained from interacting with students is they don't like formal communications. Somehow the Li of their communication now is anything formal is treated with suspicion. This is like official speak. So now they want to hear authentic stories. So I find myself, if I want to communicate on these kind of matters, I somehow must craft it as an authentic story to reach to them. I know it's difficult, and some of us are like, I don't have so many authentic stories to craft. Then how? Then I think maybe if we can't craft authentic stories, then can we find and identify better role models? And I say this also, not just for the younger generation. We talk about young parents. You know, there are all these parenting forums that some people say are very toxic. Why? Because adults are also looking for role models. In the absence of like some authority or institution to say these are good practices, what do? We oftentimes, when it comes to identifying role models, we go for the people who just have very good marketing, right? So we say, oh, this person seems very good, and we identify that. But when somebody of a leadership position says, hey, you know, this is madness, we take cues from these people, and we say, hey, maybe I should. Like sometimes, like Minister of Education say, hey, you know, like maybe we need to treat mental health issues seriously. People need to rest and all that. Or even if the principal says, hey, guys, take a break, drink some water. I do this for my 400 student class. You know, I say, hey, guys, I know the deadline is coming up, but please rest. I know you all are stressed. Have an ice cream. Yeah, go and have ice cream together. Yeah, calm your minds. When we exercise our leadership and authority, they take direction. They start to say, oh, okay, maybe it's not as crazy as it seems. So these are some ways that I found. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
So I'll pick out another question from the Q&A box before we take another in-person question. So this person has a question that said, if Li is not fixed, would it be true that negative Li, such as rudeness or inconsiderate behavior, can also be contagious?
It can. But I think we need to understand that if they are contagious, it's because they realize that doing it earns the trust or the praise of other peers. So that means if I'm the recipient of the intended rudeness, they don't mean to increase their connection with me. They want to increase the connection with other people, right? So then the question is, what might be a better Li to show them that this is a way around it, that, hey, instead of behaving like this person, why don't you behave in this other way that is more productive? Of course, I know, easier said than done, especially with teenagers. It can be a bit difficult because among the cool crowd, it can be a bit hard to overcome that. But with cooler heads, more sensible minds, they will listen to reason.
So interestingly enough, I think this person followed up with an example.
Okay, sure.
So if a student responds rudely to a teacher in class, maybe calling the teacher like a not so nice word, publicly in front of students, how should the teacher respond to this?
Oh, I just thought of this. You know, there's actually this idea came from a comedian. He used to be bullied, and because the bullies took satisfaction in bullying, right? And then what did the comedian do? He made it uncool for them. How? He started deriving. He pretended that he was deriving pleasure from it. Then everyone was like, ew. Then they stopped bullying because suddenly the cool factor was lost. It became uncool. Yeah. So that's possibly one way to go about it.
I hope teachers in the audience, if you have opinions on this, please share.
Yeah.
Share them in the chat box or Q&A. We'd love to
Yeah.
know. Okay, so maybe a question from the audience. Yes, sir. I will pass you a mic. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for the sharing. Yeah, could I ask a more general questions? Because first, I'm not in Confucians, so I would like to know whether the way you define, or rather you talk about Li, is a very comprehensive Li, so far I've heard, no? Including online Li as well. But what Confucius have talked about Li, in my impression only, is a very restrictive, more Li in the Chinese history context, at least starting from how many thousand years ago. Yeah, so I'd just like to clarify whether the Li you are saying, whether it's very different from the Confucian's Li, like Jun Jun Chen Chen, I mean, respect the emperor more than others, if I interpret it correctly.
Sure.
Yeah. Then the second question is about, you stress a lot about role model and listen to authority, but I don't think that maybe most people will respect the authority and follow of what they think about Li, but I think in this modern world, a lot of even the things that's said by authority may not be respected by a normal common people. Just like what Biden have said, become something like
Sure.
a bad things has go against what he have said. Yeah, just and
So
then you talk about
maybe we can
authentic.
take your first question
Okay,
first,
sure.
because I think we were forgetting the first question.
Okay. I think the first question, like, is this authentic Confucianism? I think the complication is that there is classical Confucianism, which is what I'm basing this on, and there's also Neo-Confucianism, which is like Buddhism plus Confucianism mixed and evolved together. And there's also Confucianism in practice, in history. Like, so people say, oh, Confucius this, Confucius that, but it may not actually relate to the text. Now, where am I going with this? I personally I'm not claiming this is the authentic Confucian interpretation. In fact, I don't think any one of us can dare to claim that. But what I would like to offer is, hey, here is this idea from ancient times that can really broaden how we look at the problem. Yeah. So, and having this understanding of Li already allows us to understand this phenomenon that we're seeing. So that's all, very, very, very modestly. The issue of authority. Now, I tell you something interesting. People always like to make this association that, China, imperial China is all very authoritative, it's all very respect the elders, very one-directional, right? But you know what's interesting? The evolution of the political legitimacy in China started out from care. If you go back to the story of the ancient sages, there was a social contract between the ancient sage kings and the people, right? I'm going to look after you, and you do your part, and together we will share the benefits of it. And that slowly evolved into what we call the mandate of heaven. So if the emperor doesn't do their duty, heaven is going to take away the mandate and give it to other people to care, who can exercise the care properly. Interestingly, you see that mandate of heaven idea still in China, to some extent, even in Singapore. Yeah, some people still think in this way. Now, where am I going with this? So, authority for Confucius, there's a typical misunderstanding of Confucianism that is one-sided. But actually, if you go back to the Analects of Confucius, there is reciprocity, right? So what does this mean? That as a leader or as a senior, as an elder, okay, I am also obligated, according to Confucius, to reciprocate. So it's not just serve me, listen to me, right? So only when there's a reciprocal relationship. Applying this to the context of what I said, authority, leadership is only effective when we start to show care. Like as a teacher, when I show that I care for my students, then my students respect my words. If I don't care, then what's going to happen? The students are going to like, who the hell are you? Well, why are you telling me what to do? I don't care about you, right? But when they start to see, oh, this teacher cares for me, this teacher is willing to put aside time to find out what I'm going through, what are my problems, how to overcome this, then that bond forms. And then if we say, hey, you know, maybe this is not a good idea for you to do this, or maybe consider this as a better role model, then they listen to us better. Yeah? So it's all about having that care, not just authority, but care, first and foremost. Then they will reciprocate. Yeah.
In that vein, do you maybe after this talk you can share some key resources or texts that you use so that those who are interested to go deeper into the topic can refer to them on their own time?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can put some of those in the follow-up email that we'll blast to our mailing list.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we are slowly running out of time. Perhaps I can take a final question from the audience. If there's yes, we'll pass you a mic.
Hi, Prof. So I know you mentioned about how, say, we can facilitate Li by, like, perhaps, say, setting aside some decompression time. But I think I would like to ask, what can we do to build resilience in situations where the external factors are not necessarily working in our favor?
Could you maybe give an example to help me see the direction that you're thinking?
Yeah, sure. So let's say, like, I'll use this as like a positive example. We take a class where perhaps there is a time set aside for, say, students who ask questions, for students who interact with each other. Mm-hmm. And then perhaps, like, as a student, you would know, say, okay, this is a good time for me to participate in, like, say, the activity of, you know, asking questions, perhaps, like, discussing some of the ideas in class. But let's say I am a student and I just get dropped into a foreign country, for example. I do not know the local ritual script. They do not know mine. So what are some strategies we can, say, employ to ensure that collectively we are all making the best possible out of the situation? Okay,
so at least for a classroom setting, the key is really setting expectations right. So if we talk about things like this, right, we don't leave it to people to assume. You know, one of the interesting things I found is that as an educator, for things that I don't say, my students tend to assume the worst. So over the years I realized I need to spell everything out very clearly. This is the expectation, this is what. Why do they assume the worst? Because they have been through, I mean, if you want to frame it as Li, you can, right? They have been through worse Li. And so the imagination that they have is, if I say this and it's stupid, it'll be the end of me. Because somehow the imagination, the narrative has been filled by whatever background situation or context that they have encountered, right? So then we need to clarify the expectation and say, this is not, whatever you're imagining, that's not it. Here, in this classroom, with me as your educator, here's the expectation. If you're going to have this imagining, imagine this instead. Yeah. And if you look at the analysis of Confucius, he goes one step further. He says, your actions must cohere with your words. Yeah? Because how do students know that we're trustworthy? How do people know that we're trustworthy? Right? If we contradict what we say, then they're going to say, hey, this guy doesn't follow what they say, right? So we have to be consistent. If I say, don't worry, you can tell me what happened, I will not get mad at you, then you have to actually not get mad, right? Likewise, if we say, okay, this is a safe environment, means what? We must also show that we're open to any comments. One of the things that educators don't do fully all the time, I used to make this mistake. I say this, right? Then sometimes a student will say something jarring, and then I accidentally make a natural reaction like, oh. Then they see, that's a judgmental look, right? So that is action not cohering with words. So I learned over the years that I need to be consistent. So even though it's something jarring, I still have to maintain that calm demeanor. Oh, interesting, right? Then they feel safe. Then they know that this person who sets the Li is consistent throughout, and then they know that they can trust it. Yeah.
Okay, it is 8:01, so I think we will end the talk here. So thanks everyone for coming in person, and thanks everyone for tuning in online. Yes, and please have a wonderful round of applause for Jonathan.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will just have to plug the next 2 talks we have in our dialogue series. So we're very grateful that this is, Jonathan was able to join us for the last talk of 2023. The next one will be in 2024. So if you'd like to sign up for supporting caregivers mental wellness, you can scan the QR code here. That's on 25th Jan. I'll give you like 3 seconds. Okay, and the next one we have in February will be Harvesting Wellness, the transformative power of urban farming in social care settings. So I think this is an interesting talk about growing an urban farm in social care spaces. So please go ahead and register for that if you like. Yes, and if you are done with that, I think thank you all very much for coming.